All right. I'll call the meeting of the Bend MPO Technical Advisory Committee on March 2nd, 2022 to order. And just do introductions. I'll start with MPO staff. We have Andrea Napoli, Senior Planner. I'm Tyler Diekey, MPO Manager. Hovey Anderson, Program Coordinator. Call a meeting of the Bend MPO Technical Advisory Committee on March 2nd, 2022.
What happened?
Sorry. That was me.
Right. Peter Russell.
Oh, you want an audio response? Yes,
Sure.
present.
All right. Greg Bryant. Well, he moved his mouth. He didn't he's muted, so.
Okay, wait a minute. I thought, okay, I'm here.
All right. Rachel Zockham.
Present.
All right. Henry Stroud.
Here.
Brian Potwin.
Here.
Angie Brewer. And would you introduce yourself, Angie?
Sure, thank you. I'm Angie Brewer. I'm the new DLCD Central Oregon Regional Representative, replacing Scott Edelman. I'm currently covering a 10-county spread, all of Central Oregon and the southeastern corner, and rather new to my role. I'm 1 month in, but happy to be here and grateful for the invitation to be on the team and looking forward to working with you all.
Great, thank you. Dave Thompson.
Present.
Rick Williams.
Hi all.
All right. And then Robin Lewis is with us as well.
Hi. I just didn't turn my video on.
All right. And I see Rachel Tupica from Federal Highway Administration is with us as well.
I am. Good morning, everyone.
And who have I missed? Cameron Prow.
Here.
And then I see we have Doreen Ty. Just a guest.
Hi.
Anyone else, Toby?
Teresa Conley's here.
Oh, yes. Teresa. Sorry.
Hi, Teresa.
Hi, no worries. Teresa Conley with the ODOT Public Transportation Division.
All right. Great. Thank you. Toby?
Yeah. Okay, so we are in our virtual meeting guidelines, episode 750. But just remember to raise your hand at any time during this meeting if you have any concerns, questions, technical issues, and I'll be happy to help. Closed caption is available if you have a problem hearing it. Down below, you'll see the CC in a square that can give you some subtitles as you're following along if you'd like. And this meeting is recorded, so you will have it available on YouTube through the MPO channel if you ever want to check it out again. Thank you.
All right, on to our meeting minutes. So we have in your packet, you have the draft meeting minutes from our February 2nd meeting. If there's, I guess, number one, does anybody have any questions or comments on those? And if not, I'll look for a motion to approve those minutes.
I move approval of the February 2nd, 2022 draft minutes as presented.
Second.
Second.
All right. Any discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, carried. Thank you. Our next agenda item is Andrea is going to talk about reallocation of some of the returned STBG
Hold on
funds.
for just a second. Cameron, can I help you? I'll unmute you. There you go. Just so for the record, Rick Williams set the motion and Henry Stroud seconded. Just
No.
right.
No.
Thank you.
Peter
Okay.
did.
You got it. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Hey, and,
Um,
Andrea, I'm not seeing Dave on yet. I don't know if Robin was presenting for Dave. I just forwarded him the webinar link that I got from registering, but I was thinking he was going to be on with us.
Oh yeah, so he gave me his slides for this, and he was going to present the details of the project. So maybe once we, I've got a couple slides to introduce it. If he doesn't come on, are you able to potentially sub in for some of the info?
For some of the info, I could definitely
Yeah, we
muddle
could
through
probably
some of
muddle
it.
through. Yeah.
Okay, you too. Okay, all right.
I don't want to steal Dave's thunder because he's been the driving force, but I could do my best.
Okay. Yeah, he sent me about 4 or 5 slides. So, Tyler, if you want to move on to the next slide, I can go ahead and.
Yep.
So, essentially, what we're looking for today from the TAC is a funding recommendation to the policy board as far as consideration for reallocating returned STBG funding awards, as well as another small remaining amount of federal fiscal year 2021 STBG dollars. So a little background here. In November, the TAC had recommended language to the policy board around the use and reallocation of returned STBG awards from our project application process. Then in December, the policy board had finalized and approved that language. And that included 4 eligibility categories where consideration would be given for reallocation of available funds. So those categories are listed in the memo in the agenda packet, but just to refresh here, so those that includes projects that were awarded funding that are experiencing a funding shortfall to complete the project. That also includes projects that were awarded funding in an out year and are requesting advancement, as well as projects that had applied and underwent review during our most recent application process, but were not awarded funding for whatever reason. And then the last category are for projects with the City of Bend Street Preservation Program. So once the policy board had approved this policy language, I had requested that TAC members and others email me any eligible projects that they'd like to have considered for use of recently returned STBG funding awards. We received 1 project that was submitted that falls under the eligibility category of the City of Bend Street Preservation Program. And that is the Riverfront Street Deschutes River Trail segment at Galveston to Miller's Landing Park, which is a complete street capital improvement project. And after my next slide, David Abbas from the city was going to give you detailed information about it, but I'm hoping that Henry and Robin can help out here. So go ahead and move to the, first of all, are there any questions about the background here, kind of how we got to this point? Okay, hearing none. Tyler, do you want to move to the next slide?
I'm just gonna jump in for a minute. No questions about that, but just that we had a couple new people show up. So I've got a phone caller in here, number ending in 5145. If you wanted to introduce yourself. Oh, no, maybe not. And then Liza Hamada, our community member, just popped in, and also Neil Bonsgard is here as well.
Okay. So the funds that we have available currently, so we have just over 319,000 in returned 2021 and 2022 STBG or Surface Transportation Block Grant Awards. If you remember, the bulk of that is from the Broster House Road Undercrossing project, where another funding source was used. And then approximately 17,000 returned from Bend Parks for the Ferguson Road segment of their trail crossing project, since that will now be completed with a city utility project. And then additionally, we do have just over $26,000 in remaining unused 2021 STBG funds. And those dollars are the result of when we estimate our annual allocation versus what we actually receive from ODOT. So we have a total available of $345,750. So with that, the next slide, you can move to the next slide, Tyler. And this is, there's some slides here that go into the details of this specific project. You can go to the next slide.
And Andrea, I'm happy to kind of take it from here and just
Okay, perfect.
do my best and give some background, and hopefully Dave comes in, or Robin. I think between us, we can probably get the pertinent information out to the group. So as Andrea said, we have teamed up with the city on an application for the unused funds. And we're hoping to put this money towards a collaboration project that would be led by the city of Bend, but supported by Bend Parks and Rec. And the goal of this project is to really improve the connection along the Deschutes River Trail in between Miller's Landing Park, so the Whitewater Park area and the old mill, and Drake Park. This has been a long time goal and a high priority project of the Park District. We started doing design work on this project way back in 2016, 2017, after a fairly extensive public outreach campaign. Where we had numerous public meetings, we did questionnaires with the community, and we all decided, and our board agreed, that we wanted to make this a priority project. So the long and the short of it is, when we really started diving into the designs, and I'll go into a little bit of the details on the next slide, the project became cost prohibitive for the Park District because of the extensive street reconstruction that's necessary, as well as numerous utility impacts and the need to move water vaults and a lot of outdated utilities that really kind of just became beyond the pale for what the Park District could do on our own. However, we've continued to hold around $700,000. So we have $703,000 identified in our CIP for the next fiscal year, which begins July 1, really in the hopes that we could gather additional funds and that the city would be willing to bring some resources to the table. So that's all that, which I know it's a little hard to read, but that's the cut sheet from our capital improvement plan. And all that really says is, showing that you guys that we have the $700,000 approved and allocated. And the stretch of trail, it's about just under half miles, maybe 0.3, 0.4 miles, and it runs along Riverfront Street. You go to the next slide, Andre.
Oops, Henry, just a quick question for you, just because I know some folks on here may not be totally know everything about it, but what is the planned extent of the Chutes River Trail?
Sure. So the planned extent right now of the Deschutes River Trail is Riley Ranch in the north to essentially, it's called Sunset Hill or Cinder Cone in the south. And then our comprehensive plan still shows the South UGB Bridge, but we're not actively working on that project because of the political turmoil, I guess, for lack of a better word, that was stirred up with that project a number of years ago. But the planned DRT would be from essentially Riley Ranch, which connects to Temelo State Park in the north, all the way through town, and then connecting to the Deschutes National Forest via a bridge across the river down by Deschutes River Woods. This gap is the last unfunded gap along the DRT through Bend. We are currently working on getting the easements for the connections in the north, so through the Shevlin Sand and Gravel property. And then we have a number of existing easements that gets the trail all the way down to Cinder Cone Butte, leaving the South UGB Bridge out of it. This is really kind of the last unfunded major gap on the trail in Bend.
Perfect, thank you. And I see Greg Bryant has his hand up.
Yeah, my question is exactly what were you going to do to this? You increase the width of it, or what was the? Because I run this probably two, 3 times a month.
Greg, that's a great question. Let's go to the next slide, and then we can kind of talk about some of the options that we've looked at. Well, I'll get to it on the next, but this is just kind of some big picture stuff. But Greg, I'll answer your question the best that I can, because we are very limited on right of way there.
I got you.
So just as I said before, this project has been discussed between both agencies for a number of years, but there are a number of limitations. Funding has always been limited. There is a very narrow right-of-way. It's a 40-foot right-of-way through this corridor, which really limits what we can do, and there's a number of utility impacts. as I mentioned earlier, the street pavement conditions, maybe Robin can jump in on what the PCI value means, but our understanding is that the road needs to be fully reconstructed, and it's beyond cost effective to do preservation or maintenance on the road.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So PCI just means the pavement has failed. We want to keep them in the 70 to 80 range. And so out of a scale of 100, this is quite low. It just means it has a lot of cracking, faulting, spalling.
Mm-hmm. And in addition to being a planned trail, it's also identified as part of the city's low stress network and their new TSP. And really the desire here is to get BPRD and the city of Bend and all the different agencies to work together, with our powers combined approach. We can get this project done. Good. Next slide. So, Craig, just working on some of your questions here. So like I said, we've got a 40-foot right of way, which really limits what we can do. Beginning in 2017, we developed a base concept for the plan, and we developed that base concept up to the 60% design level. This was really kind of a shared street approach, which was the result of a lot of the public outreach we did. I think people felt like the street functioned well, and if we could control vehicle speeds and just improve the conditions out there, it would essentially serve as a usable shared space for trail users and have the least amount of impacts. So that concept involved a 6.5-foot sidewalk, and then we retained a 12-bound southbound lane and a 10-foot northbound lane. The cost estimate for that project was around $1.04 million, and that was in 2017. So probably going to cost a little bit more now.
Right.
We also developed a number of alternatives looking at, okay, what can we do to go above and beyond? And when I say above and beyond, trying to retain a full 10-foot trail along the whole street. The important thing to remember is that with each one of these alternatives, there's impacts and there's trade-offs. So the first alternative, we were looking at a full width 10-foot path and then retaining some parking on the street. So there'd be 8-foot parking bays in certain areas. But under this concept, there would only be an 11-foot southbound lane. So the road was going to be converted to one way. And then, the following two alternatives. So we looked at a 10-foot path, no street parking, 10-foot northbound and southbound lanes. In this scenario, the path kind of darted around a lot of the existing utility poles and some of the other conflicts that were out there. And then the third alternative was more or less a straight path that went through as many of those conflicts as we can. But in this concept, we weren't undergrounding any of the overhead power. So you'd still have some of the power poles existing within the trail. These estimates range from about $1 million to $1.2 million. And it was at this point that we didn't take our design work any further, just because we did not have enough money. And at the time, the city wasn't prepared to come to the table as a partner in this project. So in terms of the funding, like I said, we've got $700,000 in our CIP. We are hopeful that we would be able to get the remaining STBG funds to put towards this project. And then Dave is working on the city end to see if we get this award, what other sort of street preservation funding or utility funding that they could bring to the table for this project. One of the advantages of having this be a city-led project is that the city has franchise agreements with the utilities that gives them a lot more power in terms of requiring utility relocations, and they can also pull money from other pieces of the budget to put towards this project. So really the goal here is, we're trying to get as much funding as possible, and we want to pick up where we left off, where we want to restart the public outreach. We want to modernize, figure out which concept we want to go with. We want to modernize those designs and see what we can do in terms of final design with the city's effort here. You can go to the next slide, Tyler. And here, maybe I'm going to hand it over to Robin. I don't know what Dave's intent was on these slides. I could sure guess, but Robin, if you maybe want to give a crack and I can jump in here.
Yeah, sure. These were just meant to demonstrate that there is going to be quite a bit of development in the core area, and how the Deschutes River Trail and even crossing key route number 2 affects this area. So the picture on the left is mixed use, and the picture on the right is employment. I'm sorry, the one on the left is housing, one on the right is employment. And so it's really just showing that there's going to be a lot of growth in this downtown area. We're also working on the Hawthorne overcrossing to kind of connect the two halves of downtown closer to 3rd Street, extending the downtown a little bit east towards 3rd Street. But that overcrossing, connecting it to the Deschutes River Trail, and that will get us, past 3rd Street up and down the DRT, which connects a lot of key employment areas.
And I would just add, this is, so we maintain a system of trail counters. We have about 25 trail counters throughout the city. The DRT near this area is our most heavily used trail. So we see about 1,000 trail users a day at Miller's Landing. That's kind of a hub, so they do go in multiple directions, but we know that this is a heavily used corridor, especially during the summer float season when people get out at Drake and walk north back to walk south, back to the old mill and to the park and float parking area.
Yeah.
Next slide. A little hard to see, but I think this is
a little busy, yeah.
Yeah, it's just showing that it's part of the planned low stress bicycle network in the TSP.
Looks like Rick has his hand up.
Yeah, just a quick question for Henry. I'm curious, does the park district maintain the trails in the wintertime? Do snow removal and stuff so it can actually be used for commute traffic? Or
Yeah,
is it recreational?
we do snow removal. So we've got like a triage list or a priority list for our trails. This one is one that is often removed very, very quickly. We do snow removal to the old mill. And then once we get south of the Colorado underpass, the old mill is actually responsible for that. But between them and us, this area is usually cleared pretty quickly.
Okay.
We don't do it on all our trails. And it's typically only our hard surface trails that we're doing snow removal on.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and then here's just some photos of the existing conditions. Robin and I recently went on a walk with the community and with a couple of reps from the neighborhood association just to look at what the conditions were like now. And I don't know when these photos were taken, but they're fairly representative. There's a lot of deterioration on the sidewalks down there. A lot of the curbs are chipping, and then the road is just a mosaic of different asphalt qualities and resurfacing. It's pretty gnarly down there. One of the big things to point out is that, the sidewalk is pretty narrow width and it's disjointed. There's a lot of root heave. It's not super functional right now. And so what we have is a majority of the trail users end up walking in the roadway. And it semi-works because there's not a high traffic volume and it tends to have low vehicle speeds, partly due to the narrow right-of-way. But it's not great conditions down there. At a minimum, we want to bring the road up to a modern standard, a new surface, maybe do some speed controls in there, maybe speed tables or bump outs, and to really bring this sidewalk up to a modern, essentially design and standard, and have it continuous throughout this whole section.
Yeah, Henry. Yeah, I'll also comment that sidewalk. I'm a runner and I can't run that sidewalk because it's just too deteriorated. Yeah. It's got different levels. It's in terrible shape. I mean, I'd say it's a 0, but because I have to run on in the road when I'm running that. So just to let you know.
And again, here's just another photo of some of the conditions that we have there. It's a very narrow right-of-way. I'm not sure if that fence is encroaching into the right-of-way, but it's not a lot of space to work with throughout the majority of this corridor.
Dave Thompson has his hand up.
Dave?
Yeah, I was just curious. You said you took a walk with some of the neighborhood representatives. I'm curious what their thoughts were.
So I think their primary goal was to try to re-energize this project, Dave. They still had a stated preference for a shared street, and they really like the idea of doing traffic calming. And they threw out some additional ideas that we hadn't considered. They talked about restricting turns off Galveston/Temelo onto the road to reduce traffic volumes. I think there was some concern about trying to expand that sidewalk to a full width trail and what that could mean for some of the frontages of these properties, and if there would be impacts outside of the existing right of way. That's not our intent on this project. We want to work within the existing right of way. And then we also talked about some of the trade-offs on the different alternatives. If we do try to do a full width trail, it affects curb lines on the other side of the street, which could push those curb lines very close to some of the existing residences there. So it was kind of just a rehash of old designs and pontificating on what could be in the future.
Okay, but it sounds like a generally positive vibe from the community.
Yeah,
So far.
generally positive.
Yeah, thanks.
And Neil, who's on this call, I think Neil was also out there at the walk, and it's a good group. That might have been a different day with Neil, but we were down there together. So. Yeah, anyways, I think that's what we had. If there's any additional questions, I'm happy to dive into this more and try to answer as much as I can. Looks like Brian has his hand up.
Brian?
Yeah, great. Thank you. I was just curious about stormwater treatments. I know that's been a big issue as far as the Galveston project. And you didn't mention anything that as far as the potential designs, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, Brian, to be honest, I don't know much about the stormwater situation down there. And I wouldn't hazard to guess. I don't recall what was in our initial designs or if that is piped storm sewer or what the situation is. Robin may know more.
It's just something we'll have to look at through design, Brian. We are trying to do more green stormwater treatment. And so, anything from porous pavement to rain gardens to swales. We're really trying to keep the sediments particularly close to rivers so we don't contaminate groundwater.
Yeah, it just seems like a great opportunity to incorporate, some of those options in there, protect the river, also create some green space within the stretch as well.
Yeah, but Brian, that's a really good point. And there's a few other things we're looking at as part of this project that didn't get mentioned. We really want to improve the approach and the grades to the Columbia Bridge, the little ped bridge that goes over to Columbia Park. There's a new home that went in, and that part of that has been paved because is going to be paved because it doubles as a driveway. But there's some really funky grades that aren't great for bikes and peds as you approach that bridge. So we're looking at that. We're also looking at raising and creating almost like an alley-like condition for the portion of the street that's closest to Miller's Landing Park to try to restrict some of the cars that go in there and then have to back out and do kind of an awkward turn and make some improvements to the trail entrance there. And then, of course, I'm sure stormwater is going to be part of any reconstruction plan for the street.
Any other questions or potential discussions around TAC support of MPO support for this project?
No, I support it. It sounds like a good option.
Any TAC members interested in making a motion?
Okay, I move to recommend approval of the policy board for the $345,750 in available CTB funds to be used for the city of Bend Street Preservation Program Waterfront Street / Deschutes River Trail Complete Street Capital Improvement Project.
Second.
Sorry about that, guys.
I have Greg Bryant with a motion, Dave Thompson from BPAC with a second. And then Cameron has her hand up.
I believe on the motion that it's Riverfront Street, not Waterfront Street.
Okay,
It is
sorry.
Riverfront. And Hovey, I'm going to abstain from voting just because of I'd be the PM on this project. So I'm not sure I can vote on the motion.
Okay.
Is there any discussion?
No.
If not, all in favor?
Aye.
I,
Aye.
Any opposed? And one abstention? All right, thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Cameron, you
Next-
have your hand still up, just making sure there wasn't anything else. Okay. Okay, go ahead, Tyler.
All right, next up is an update on safe routes to schools. And we're going to have both Brian Potwin talk about the work that they are doing and the work that Robin Lewis is doing at the City of Bend. And I will let Brian, would you like to go first?
Sure, thank you.
No, I'll stop sharing and you can pull up your presentation.
Great. All right. All right, good morning, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to come and speak about Safe Routes to School. It's an amazing time for Safe Routes to School. I don't know if you are all aware of the funds that are available through the new IIJA, but there's about $27 million in Oregon that is available for Safe Routes to School funds. I'm going to be talking about a little bit about some of the funds that we're going to be going after. But a quick overview of that is there's roughly $1 million available for education grants and encouragement grants, which is what Commute Options focuses on. And then there's roughly 26 million available for construction grants. And this is not as new anymore, but it's pretty new as far as being able to apply for funding to actually build projects within a mile and a half radius around schools. I'm also on the Safe Routes to School Advisory Committee, along with Kim Crabtree, who's the Transportation Director of Bend Lapine Transportation Department. We are looking at actually expanding that a little bit farther out to encompass a little bit more catchment as far as potential projects go. So we're pretty excited about that locally. And Robin's going to be talking to you a little bit about construction, what's going on there. So to back up, I always love to give a quick overview. What is Safe Routes to School? Well, Safe Routes to School creates fun, convenient, and safe opportunities for students to walk and roll to and from school. Like I just said, that encompasses the education and encouragement side and also the infrastructure or construction side. Our role, I'm also going to be talking about that and some of the goals that we have and some of the needs that we're seeing as far as locally with Safe Routes to School. So Safe Routes to School, here's a great couple of photos. Our coordinator in the middle there, Whitney Bennett, working with some kiddos, teaching some crosswalk safety and also bicycle safety. This is our primary function as far as the safety education goes within schools, but we also create fun events to encourage students and families to walk to and from school. Also, we've got some great photos here of some engagements. These got some pre-COVID photos here of people doing things together and in classroom. This feels like such a long time ago now. We're starting to get back to this a little bit, but we've really changed what we've been up to, and I'll get into that in a couple minutes. So a little history. We've been involved, Commute Options, in Safe Routes to School since 2005. We work in 3 counties, the Tri-County area, 4 different school districts, over 35 schools over the last 17 plus years. And during that time frame, we built a lot of relationships and partnerships with the schools and school districts. Since COVID hit, we've had to completely about-face, transition into something totally different. Of course, as everybody has lots of virtual resources, adapted lesson plans, adapting to local guidelines, and really changing up our walking school bus program which is something I'm going to cover as far as where we're switching our model to in just a little bit. So it's been an interesting couple of years. Backing up as far as how we're involved with education, focusing on walking and rolling safety and really teaching students about the benefits of active transportation. This is literally going into schools and working with students hands-on. You can see a great photo here of some kiddos making some nice left-hand turns. Look at those hand signals, they're so good. Must have been my students. Now they're probably Whitney's. I haven't taught for years, actually. So where we're going with this as a new model, and I'll tell you a little bit about why we're transitioning this way, is what we call education in action. And it's really combining the education aspects of Safe Routes to School with the actual transportation to and from school and integrating those two together. Through bike trains and walking school buses. Over the last 2 years, what we've found is it's been extremely challenging to get the same amount of time and exposure with the students to teach. And so where we've been successful is transitioning over to this education in action. And this is actually what we will be applying for with the ODOT Safe Routes to School funds. Because we have been a recipient of the ODOT funds for 15 plus years, we don't qualify for their larger funding bucket. And so we are applying for what they call the innovation grants. It's a $50,000 grant that is spread over a 2-year time period, which will allow us basically to work with one singular school through that grant. We're choosing to work with Bear Creek Elementary, based upon involvement and also enthusiasm and need. There's going to be some school buses taken away from Bear Creek Elementary, which we are working with the school district to identify where these transportation disparities are. And we hope to expand this. We have other funding we're going to be tapping into from previous contracts to work with education in action with other schools in Ben Lapine. And we're looking at other avenues as well to have a multifaceted funding approach for this new model, which we're pretty excited about, actually. And here's a great photo of our coordinator, Whitney, one of our volunteers, and some of the students that we've been working with. So encouragement a little bit about that, because it's not just education. This is the fun part, if you will. So this is the walk and roll to school days that happen in May and October, virtual challenges where kiddos win razor scooters like the one on the right there. We've done bike nights where it's all about families and getting folks together. And then a new thing that we've been working on during the COVID time period is what's called traffic gardens. And if you've never heard of those before, it's basically taking a nice big piece of pavement, like the student on the right there, you can see, and putting in basically a mock-up street so they can learn on their own. We've got several traffic gardens in the Tri-County area. It's been really successful as far as engagement with community members, and we would like to expand that as well. It's kind of a no-touch sort of education model that we've moved towards. The walking school bus is something that we actually had going prior to COVID at 7 different schools, 5 days a week, and to and from school. It was way more than we anticipated as far as our ability to take this on, because it was so successful. We had and to define that, we had a cap of 15 students per walking school bus based upon recommendations that we learned as far as what one adult can handle and how many students and the safety and everything. So we were at capacity when COVID hit, and I was so very sad to pull this program because it was actually making a difference. We'd like to bring this back, but also add the education in. Some of these bullet points give you, the reasons why it's great, but really it's all about taking cars off the street, and this was definitely doing that. So some of the challenges we've had with it, there's staffing shortages, bus route shortages, and the demand has gone up, but we've also had fewer volunteers for lots of different reasons. Folks are having a hard time hiring, and it's hard to get people to work for free. So I think that's part of the bigger equation. Some of the current challenges we're having, some school policy changes, COVID safety concerns, like I talked about before, school staffing shortages, buses getting pulled, things of that nature. So there's a lot of different dynamics occurring around what makes this challenging. So what we're working on with our goals and needs is to engage, expand, and sustain this program. Like I said, we're changing up right now from what you all have known us to do and moving into a new model. With this, we feel like it's going to be the most successful as far as working and continuing to have partnerships with schools, not taking up so much of their class time, and getting the education to the students in most need. So what that looks like is education in action, which is the walking school bus education integration combo in all schools in Bend Pine, working more with the city of Bend and increasing our partnership with the MPO. And then also we want to get into having a mentoring program because the Safe Routes to School program from ODOT is now expanding or potentially expanding into high schools as well. So there's some really good opportunities there for youth to work with youth, which is fantastic. Some of the future of this really around the state, because Commute Options is also engaged on a statewide level. We work with the Technical Assistance Provider Program through ODOT. Alta Planning and Design runs that, and one of our staff members full-time providing technical assistance. Part of that is working on diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility, also encouragement, reach, and impact, and then also for us, increasing our statewide impact. Because we've been doing this for such a long time, we really are some of the experts in the state, and the things that we developed during COVID have been branched out and used across the state because they were so that good. That folks are saying, what is Commute Options doing? You guys are amazing. We want to replicate that. I'm totally tooting my staff's horn right now because they're fantastic. But that's what's been going on here locally. Not only are we working with our local students, but we're having that broader statewide impact. So I've already kind of talked about some of the local needs, statewide needs. I addressed a little bit there as well, more technical assistance. With these grants that are coming out with IIJA, being on the Safe Routes to School Advisory Committee, myself personally for the last several years, these grants have been overprescribed, meaning, you can see that map behind the slide there with all the different counties. And we've been getting a lot of different applications from across the state, and it just breaks my heart to not be able to award every single one of them, because I've been working in Safe Routes to School since I started with Commute Options, and we've never had such a interest in Oregon. And now that there's more funding, I don't think in this round we'll be able to fund as much as we want to, but the next round, I'm hoping that the SRAC is able to fund more projects, not only education, but also the infrastructure and construction part of it, which leads me to turn it over to Robin to talk about what's going on here locally as far as infrastructure projects. And if you don't have my email address, it's right there on the screen. So thanks, and I don't know if you have any questions, but I'll turn it over to Robin.
Thank you.
Robin. Robin, do you want to share your screen, or do you want me to pull it up?
I'm going to try sharing. And hopefully that works. So yeah, that was a great lead in from Brian. It is exciting also in the city of Bend, some of the things that we're doing for just agency coordination and infrastructure. We are meeting quarterly with the school district and Commute Options to talk about what connections are missing as the school district is taking bus routes offline. we're working with them to try and figure out what's needed, what needs to fill that gap. And just coming from our TSP, we've got some really good programs coming out. The most exciting, and I'll share a map with you, is in 2019, we passed the transportation system plan, and one of its action items was to identify missing sidewalk and crosswalk needs to serve schools. That work is completed, and we're incorporating it into the City of Bend standards and specifications documents, which are at council right now. They've had a work session. First and second readings occur in March. So that should be adopted, and I'll show you what that map looks like. The next process is we have a consultant on board, actually using funds from the TSP to create and do this pedestrian master plan. So that's where we'll get public comments, input. We'll start incorporating that DEIA, develop priorities, and identifying a funding mechanism for sidewalk needs, crosswalk needs.
Robin, can I just ask if you can share the screen again? I don't see that we're getting the presentation up.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, that would be great. Let's figure this out.
Right? Nobody else is seeing it. I'm just making sure. Okay.
Oh gosh.
Okay.
I have to apologize that mine isn't as beautiful as Brian's. So.
Okay, I can see it as a PowerPoint right now. If you want to do the slideshow, you can, or you can do it this way. Either way.
Robin, I can send you a bunch of photos of kids if you want them.
Yeah. We can play with it, but okay, that looks perfect.
That's okay. So,
yeah, thank you.
TSP's done. We've created these safe routes to schools, identified missing sidewalk needs, crosswalk needs. We've adopted that, or in the process of adopting that, through our standards and specs. And the exciting thing about that is any developer that comes in, they have to look at that map and see what's a missing sidewalk in the area. City projects, we look for synergy. So it's great. And I can share this map. So the purple lines are all the safe routes for the different schools.
We'll need to look at that map again too. So when you press share, maybe.
Do I have to reshare?
I think you might just need to take it out of presentation mode for your PowerPoint, and then the map might come up. I'm just guessing.
How's that?
Yes, that's it.
So I just had to reshare. So anyways, this is the city safe routes to school map. It shows all the routes to each school, including private schools. And we can turn that off so it's not as cloudy. But like if we focused in on Bear Creek, which is one of the main schools that Commute Options is working on, we've got some missing sidewalk needs, crosswalk needs, and this is like needs within the 1 mile walking district of this school. And so the nice thing about this is if we have a developer come in, like we have a developer on this corner, they can see that they need to construct the missing sidewalk. And, this is a crosswalk need because connecting these neighborhoods to that school. Anyways, it's a great tool. And if we click on each one of these, it tells us what is needed. So it tells us the countermeasure type, whether it needs illumination, and what's the situation out there. So we've put a lot of data and information in this map. And it's now part of or will be soon part of the standards and specs doc. Other things we're adding to this map, we're going to add routes to parks and trail crossings, as well as crossings to get to transit. So this is going to be a really good tool for the city to use in the future.
Is this the tool that we can share the link in the minute notes?
Yeah, I think it's going to be public as soon as it's adopted in the standards and specs doc. So yes, we'll be able to share that. Pedestrian master plan that's starting up towards the end of this month. We'll be working with the community to prioritize and identify missing sidewalk and crosswalk needs for the whole community. So that map will start getting a little crowded with needs, but and then we'll be able to establish a funding program and an approach. And that's going to be really great.
Peter has a question.
Yeah.
Hey, Peter.
Yeah, that's a really cool map. I was just curious what went into putting it together. Did you have a consultant do it? Did you do it in-house? You know, how long did it take? And, you know, FTE,
Yeah.
all that good stuff. But that's a really impressive map.
Thank you. Yeah, that map took about 3 months, and it was all staff led. We worked with the school district quite a bit on it, and reviewed it with Whitney at Commute Options. Used a lot of historical knowledge as far as where citizen service complaints were from parents that couldn't get their kids to school on a certain route. Walked a lot, biked a lot, just to look at different things. So it was pretty hands-on. And now that it's going through that public process with the pedestrian master plan, we'll get more eyes on it, because there still could be things we're missing. But we wanted to reach that timeline of the standards and specs. So we really were rushing to get it through and done by February, so that it could go into the adoption in March. So we decided to do it that way. But it will be pushed into the pedestrian master plan, which has that public component. And that is consultant led.
And then Rick has his hand up as well.
Yeah,
Rick?
Yeah, Robin, and this is more of a curiosity than anything else. I didn't have much of a chance to look at your map, but it appears like a lot of the new Bend Lapine school construction, at least at the middle school and high school levels, they put them on major collectors.
Yes.
And that seems to exacerbate the safe routes to school thing. So I feel like ODOT and the cities indirectly subsidizing poor land development choices by the school district. It seems like the school district's the missing component here of don't build a new high school, where two collectors come together.
Yeah. And I feel like they probably don't have a lot of choices in land availability. They work with large developers and they negotiate as best they can. But if they're a housing developer, the least desirable land for housing is probably going to be along the busy streets. And so that's the land that the developer is probably willing to sell them. So I don't know that they're making poor choices. I think they're just in an environment where land and growth are forcing them to do what they're doing.
Well, I'm just being the cranky old man right now.
No, I get it.
I look at my tax bill, and Bend Lapine seems to be the one that gets the lion's share of the funding.
Yeah.
And then we
so
end up again indirectly subsidizing their decisions, and I don't think that's great.
Yeah, but with our new standards and specs document, we do have shared use paths on both sides of the street, and we have crossings designated. So we're getting safer crossings and nice, comfortable facilities along the road. I think with new developments, what we're trying to get is more of the Larkspur Trail style, the Coiner Trail style that is in its own right of way. And, use of the canal trails.
Right.
And, the walking school bus that is serving Bear Creek right now, they use Larkspur Trail. And so those trails are important as school routes, and the kids love them and the parents like them. So.
No, thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and can I add to that as well? So Rick, that's part of why we're moving towards this model of the education in action with the walking school buses and teaching at the same time, is because that's over the years, that's what we've seen to actually be effective and impactful in those areas that have that type of frontage, where we can actually physically get kids to and from school and create a safe environment for them in, the not most optimal area.
Thanks, Brian. Appreciate that.
Yep. So you'll start to see a lot of our funding is tied up in the general obligation bond. So we have money identified. We'll be working with the community starting towards this fall on choosing additional projects. Our first round went out right before the bond, and we wrapped it into the bond. So we've got another year or two of construction on the projects already identified. So this map will help support the neighborhood association decisions on what projects to ask for in the next go bond round of projects. So we're excited to have this map that we can share with the neighborhood associations, and they may identify other needs as well, but we're leaving it open. It's a neighborhood association led program. So anyways, that's what's going on for the city of Bend. We have a very small project that we're working on, Brian, with that just helps with education and getting kids out on the new infrastructure that the city is building. So, we built some great shared use paths along Murphy Road, along Empire, the trails along and that serve Bear Creek Elementary. So things like that. And we want to get kids used to being on them. And so we've got a small project where Brian on Wednesdays can go in and grab some kiddos and get them out on those facilities, so that we're starting to have an education component with our CIP projects.
Robin, it looks like Cameron has her hand up, and just also a reminder that if you are sharing a slide, we don't see it. So
I'm not.
Okay.
That was my slideshow.
Okay, that was good. So, and maybe that was Cameron's question as well.
Yes, it was.
Okay. Just checking. All right.
Do we have?
Thank you, Robin.
Yeah, thank you both, Brian and Robin. Those were great.
Yeah.
Do we have any further, just questions or comments from anyone about either of their presentations?
As a note for the group, I will be posting those presentations online on the TAC webpage. So if you want to see them in full, they will be available at the end of this meeting. I just didn't do it before.
All right. Well, thank you. So next up, we have Peter Russell is going to give an update on a number of things that Deschutes County has underway. And Peter, do you want to share your screen, or do you want me to pull up the presentation?
So I once gave a 20-minute presentation to the board, thinking the entire time I was sharing my screen, and I was not. So I'll defer to you running the slides.
All right. Just give me a moment here. All right.
Why we ask, Peter.
I like to minimize my, my psychic strain. Okay, next slide. So Deschutes County is getting ready to embark on lots of different planning efforts. So I'm going to tell you how they all interrelate. The catalyst for me is I get to lead a TGM grant, Transportation Growth Management plan, we got a $75,000 grant from ODOT and DLCD to update the bike ped transit element of the Temelo community plan and also do rural trails within Sisters Country. But we've got some other plans going on as well. And so one of the challenges we have, besides some are consultant led, some are internal, all have public involvement. And so trying to keep public fatigue from happening and also people getting confused. Okay, next slide. Next slide. So what this wonderful graphic on the right shows, the big blue circle is a comprehensive plan, which is we're getting ready to update that. We're in the point of going through some consultants. The kind of salmon one to the left is the transportation system plan, which we're doing. The one to the right in the green is the Temelo community plan overall. And then the kind of orangey one in the bottom, that's just the bike ped transit section for Temelo. All these are currently either ongoing, about to start, or starting imminently. And so trying to keep it straight in the public's mind is going to be a challenge. Also, these have differing timelines when they're going to be completed and how they're going to be amended. And so we've got staff working to ensure coordination with these as much as possible. Okay, next. So the comprehensive plan, this is kind of a briefing I gave to our planning commission on the 24th of last month. So some of this will seem really simple to y'all. So we're starting our comp plan, Deschutes 2040. That's pretty the biggest plan that the county has done. That's your 30,000 foot view of what's going to go on in your comprehensive plan. They've just finished reviewing consultant proposals. They haven't selected a consultant yet, but I know that they're going through that. And we're thinking the comp plan is going to take 18 to 24 months to complete probably. Next. Then we've got a transportation system plan. Kittleson Associates is the consultant that we've hired. Our road department is leading it both in funding and leadership. They put in $250,000 for it. It's about 40% done. So we've gotten through, existing conditions, review of the current document, a draft needs list, and that looks at, local road, mainly just focusing on county roads. We deferred to ODOT for what goes on in the state system. So we're looking at county road segments, county intersections, bike ped issues with the help of our Deschutes County Bike Ped Advisory Committee. We're looking at safety projects from the Transportation Safety Action Plan that the county did in 2019 for the county network, and also looked at Sisters in that as well in Redmond. Looking at bridges, which ones need to be replaced or upgraded. So it's the whole kit and caboodle. We're going to have some online open houses the next probably month or two to share the draft list, and it's, high priority, medium priority, low priority projects, and get public feedback on that. Okay, so next slide, please. So the Temelo community plan is a subset of our comprehensive plan. Temelo is an unincorporated community, as you all know, just about 6 miles away from here. This one is going to be completely led by staff. The reason we're updating the Temelo community plan is that there's been major changes in Temelo since we last did it in 2010. You've got that residential development on the south side of US 20 that is taken off. You've got, the bikes taken off. We've seen a lot of new businesses come into Temelo. So it's really rolling. The one thing we're not looking at the Temelo community plan update is the bike ped and transit. That's going to be the province of the TGM one. Again, we're looking at online open houses coming. What we're going to have to do is work with staff and the consultant for the TGM project to make sure we don't trip over one another's feet. There's going to be a little, stop and start, and one will take the lead from the other. Okay, next. So the ODOT DLCD grant, it's a $75,000 TGM grant that we have, of which $50,000 goes to Temelo. Kittleson has been hired for that. So that's some economy of scale right there. They're doing our TSP. They're also doing this. So it'll be easier to coordinate. We're focusing on bike ped and transit because, the major transportation issues are either done with ODOT's planning efforts, or we can do stuff with the road department. So, issues about there's a scenic bikeway route that goes through town. How do you get across US 20? Currently, ODOT has a land use application at the county to build the underpass at 4th Street to go over underneath US 20 and then connect down to Strickler. Looking at pedestrian issues in the Temelo, sidewalk infill, obviously safe routes to school will probably come up in this, and then transit, working with Cascades East Transit and their master plan as they contemplate whether they want to have some sort of transit stop in Temelo. We're finalizing the schedule, so we're going back and forth. Karen Swirsky, who you all know from her time at the city and DLCD, is the project manager for Kittleson. So we're trying to coordinate how the Temelo community plan overall schedule goes and how the TGM grant goes. I see Greg's got his hands up.
Yeah, I just got a question is you're talking about an increase in population base. What was the current one and where do they think they're going to be?
They're about, yeah, so that's a great question. So currently Temelo is about, it's in the 550, 600 range. It's tough to get a handle on their population because the census data has Temelo as a census designated place. And the problem is the boundaries for the CDP are not the same as the unincorporated boundaries for Temelo under county zoning. But essentially they're about 2.1, 2.2 people per household. So we're taking the PSU population forecast and kind of fiddling with it and the number of lots that are left. And so the end result, you're probably looking at a couple hundred more people coming into Temelo. It's not suddenly going to, turn into 2,000 people or anything like that. It's still going to be, less than 1,000 by a fair bit.
Okay. I was just wondering because, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. One of the constraints on Temelo is, of course, just the size of the lots and the zoning and a couple other issues that I'll get to in a minute. So that's where we're at on both of these, just kind of really getting early in the process. Okay. Next. So two other activities that aren't planning, one isn't planning related directly, one is. So Terrebonne's another unincorporated community in Deschutes County, and their residents had asked for a sewer feasibility study. So the road department did that. Then, of course, Temelo said, well, if Terrebonne, why not Temelo? So the road department is just now in the process of selecting consultant and going and looking at a sewer feasibility study. That doesn't mean that we're proposing Deschutes County as a sewer feasibility district or excuse me, a sewer district. We're just looking at what's the issue to establish sewer in Temelo, what might it cost, where would the boundaries be, what are the applicable state rules, et cetera. What we also have is a small community system that's on, we'll call it the south side of US 20 there, between 20 and Bailey, back behind the old Temelo Feed Company. So there's a residential development there, and that small community sewer is a private enterprise. And so they have submitted a land use application to the county for a LUX land use compatibility statement to extend that north of US 20. And so where we are in that, there was a public hearing, last Tuesday. And so we're in the 7, 7, and 7 period. So for those of you who don't get to play in current planning, the first 7 days after the public hearing, both opponents and applicant can put items into the record. The second 7 opponents and applicants can squabble over what was in the first 7-week period, 7-day period. And then the last 7, the applicant gets final rebuttal. So we're I think we just should have started the second 7 today. Okay, moving on. So we're going to jump up to Sisters just for a second, just to give you it. 25,000 goes towards Sisters Country. Sisters Country had a vision action plan in the livability section. They talked about more rural trails and connectivity on the unincorporated lands outside Sisters. Again, this is a lot of it's going to be federal lands. So we won't have jurisdiction, but we can show fuzzy lines on our TSP maps, which would help people apply for grants and get funding for these. And then this one, much like we could do in Temelo, is amend our TSP bike ped section for what might come out of that one. Again, working with BPAC on this as well with other stakeholders, and it's part of our overall finalizing of the schedule. We're going to have fewer meetings on Sisters Rural Trails because the Forest Service has already done a lot of the planning. So I think we're just going to incorporate that as much as possible. Okay, next slide, please. So what are we going to do with our planning commission? Next. So we have stakeholders committees for both the Temelo project and the Sisters project. And what we did at our March 24th meeting with the Planning Commission, as I said, hey, we want to have a planning commissioner to be on the stakeholder committee for each one of these. We've got reps from ODOT, I'll be on it, of course, BPAC, Forest Service for the Sisters one, business owners for the Temelo one. For Temelo, the requirement also to have an at-large resident. So you have to either live within Temelo or own a business within Temelo. So we thought it's Temelo specific. For folks who are interested in the Temelo community plan, but don't either live in Temelo or own a business, they'll have their opportunity to comment when we have the online open houses. And of course, when we go through the adoption process for our planning commission and our board of county commissioners. So the board, despite it being an upcoming election year, we're really interested in this. So Commissioner DeBone offered to be the Temelo stakeholder rep for the board, and Commissioner Adair will be the rural trails and sisters. We're also looking at equestrian trails and sisters, which appealed to her. Going back to our planning commission, when I gave them this briefing on the 24th, so this is just a heads up. They're going to decide who's going to be there at their March 10th meeting. In terms of the stakeholder meetings, we're going to have 4 for the Temelo community plan, 2 for the rural trails. They're going to be online and 1 to 2 hours. So we're trying to minimize the drain on our stakeholders committees because you've got a lot going on. We're also going to have online open houses for the Temelo community plan overall, another round for the TSP, another for the comp plan. So I'm trying to avoid meeting fatigue for the general public. Okay, next. Okay, and there you have it in my magnificent created Venn diagram.
Thanks, Peter.
Thank you, Peter. Does anybody have any questions for Peter about any of these planning efforts that are underway or soon to be underway?
Is anybody still awake?
I wasn't going to ask that one, Peter.
Everyone's still here. Robin has a question.
If I can get myself unmuted. Peter, are you going to have any kind of one-on-one with staff, City of Bend staff, Deschutes County staff to talk about the interface zones, transportation aspects where we meet up?
We could. You're talking about the TSP overall?
Yep.
Yeah, it wasn't in our consultant's budget, but we can have some sort of meetings about that. There's also, the public process. I know that there's, just to make it even more confusing, there's a private group that wants to do some Envision Bend planning over off on the east side, which can also make things kind of interesting. But yeah, we're certainly willing to meet with you all if you want to set up a meeting.
Yeah, I think that'd be really helpful. We've and maybe even ODOT, because we've had a couple of land uses right on the edge, and we're talking about transportation, and there's not really a unified vision. Our TSP doesn't cover it, and it's land coming in and being annexed into the UGB, and so it's coming out of county land. But there's no urban transportation system aspects planned for it. Sorry about my dog. So yeah, it'd be great. I think it would be really helpful to get some of our long range planning staff and transportation staff and you and Rick to talk.
Yeah, I know we've commented on some of them as they come into county lands. Basically we kind of say, well, we're going to defer because when the city gets it, then it'll be under your jurisdiction. So, and we don't
Right.
really have the urban elements that you have. Like, for instance, we have no requirements for sidewalks outside of
Right.
unincorporated communities.
Yeah. And there's just a lot of interaction. You could probably even include Henry parks. There's some parks on the fringe, some trails on the fringe that just trying to get safe crossings of higher speed roads would be really great to have some conversations on.
Yeah, thanks, Robin. Kittleson actually reached out to us, and I've been talking to Will Groves at the county, and
Okay.
in terms of the TSP portion, and I'm going to be on one of the committees for the TSP representing the park district. So we're working to get our trail alignments incorporated and try to tackle some of those type situations, crossings, et cetera.
Okay.
Yeah, I was going to say as well, I think with the Stevens Road work that's underway that the city's doing right now, as part of that, I mean, there's kind of a little I believe there's a standalone work item that Kittleson is leading, looking at some of that connectivity, some of the connectivity issues in and around, the east side, basically from the Stevens tract, from that section all the way up to Highway 20 is my understanding. I've not had a chance to talk to city staff about that recently, but I think that's underway. And Rick, I see you're unmuted. Are you?
Yeah, this again points to the lack of urban reserve planning by the city of Bend and the strong need for that. We've had meetings ad hoc meetings between the city and the county and ODOT in the past, but these issues continue to come up. And the proper mechanism to do it is through urban reserve planning, with the city being the lead. And we're willing to do that. We have facility plans that we're going to be kicking off that will be in both jurisdictions, both in the city and the county. We need to find a formal mechanism to do this, because otherwise every couple of years we say, hey, this thing's coming up and we really need to deal with it. But it's not written down. It's not formalized.
Yeah,
And
I
try
agree
to
with Rick.
fit
I
in.
mean,
Yeah.
the county has always pushed for urban reserve because that's where you do this under the Oregon system. But either the city council has always had a reluctance to do it. But I mean, again, I think it's probably better to do urban reserve planning than we can do some of the ad hoc, but that doesn't have any legal standing. And the other thing is that the public doesn't get a chance to really comment on it. So I think urban reserve is the better way to go.
Yeah. I feel like the city gets caught in a bad position. I'm thinking about like the House Bill 4079 project right now on Highway 20. And, there's a handful of issues that need to be dealt with, but we couldn't deal with it in advance. We hadn't planned it out. And, like planning out future city collector roads, that shouldn't be part of an ODOT planning effort. That should be part of a city planning effort. But I know it puts the city in a difficult position, especially elected officials, because you start saying, I think we know where we will expand our urban growth boundary in the future. And that makes it kind of tough. But I think we can get there. And Robin, I'm not trying to give you, both barrels of the shotgun right now. But when you mentioned that, it's like, this is a good chance for us to talk about this. We need to find a formal mechanism to do it. So, as Peter referenced, so it has legal standing under the Oregon land use system.
And I'm not sure urban reserve is that legal standing. I think it's county TSP. I no longer am in the long range growth department. So we need to, talk to those experts and talk about that. But we had a lot of discussions with that on our TSP, and I think there was legal issues. So
it worked in Redmond. I mean, Redmond did urban reserve planning, so we know what's going on when they grow. I mean, from the county standpoint, we've always said urban reserve planning is the answer.
And where does that live? It's not in the city, so it's still in the county.
So it lives in our Title 19. So Title 18 is county. Pardon the digression, folks. You can all go back to sleep. So Title 18 is county zoned land. Title 19, and there's similar titles for Redmond and Sisters, are those lands that are unincorporated but have been in urban reserve planning. So the county, the state land use system has a mechanism where you can put urban reserve stuff for those lands that are intended to be city but aren't city yet.
And I would say to Rick, I know it's been discussed quite a bit in the past, but at least right now, I don't think there's going to be any movement towards doing urban reserve planning at the city. I think with the climate friendly rulemaking effort that's underway right now, once that is finalized, that is going to fully consume the city of Bend's long range planning staff for the next two to 3 years, depending on how to step through the modifications are going to be needed to both the TSP as well as the city's comp plan. So we should keep this discussion alive, but I think it'll get punted down the road again a little bit until some of that other work is done.
Yeah, and I agree, but having worked on Stevens Ranch and then the second half, again, another legislative concept, and then House Bill 4079 legislative concept, the city actively pursues these developments. And I'm having conversations with consulting firms, and they're going, the city's asking us to do this, but this isn't in the TSP. It's not in any plan anywhere. And
well, that's why they do an annexation agreement.
Right.
And those elements are included in the annexation.
Right. But when we talk about like Henry's Trail crossings and things, we need to be thinking ahead of these. And all I'm saying is we need to work at making it something other than just let's get together and focus on this one project on this day. We have a mechanism within the state to deal with it. And Tyler's point's well taken. There's going to be a lot of stuff to deal with right now, but you're the fastest growing jurisdiction in Oregon and one of the fastest growing in the Western United States. We can't have this planning vacuum.
All right. Thank you. Thanks, Peter.
Happy to help.
Well, thanks, everyone.
All right, we have a few minutes left. Rick, did you want to discuss or provide an update on any of the upcoming planning efforts that are scoped in the Bend area?
If I'd like to be able to, we're still on hold waiting on our procurement folks. Basically, the transportation land use funding pot that we use ran out of funds last year. So that forced ODOT to go back out, have a new RFQ, select new consultants before we can actually start putting money towards projects. I've been told that hopefully within the next 2 weeks, we will have the consultants have been selected. I don't know who they are yet, but they're going through the process of getting their insurance paperwork and their bonds paperwork all taken care of. Once that's done, we should start having those projects going out the door. I did get an email this morning that it says there's such a backlog within our procurement staff right now that we can't contact them on Thursdays because it's production Thursday instead of Taco Tuesday. So they're going to pick that day to try to play catch up. My point being, there's so many statements of work to go out right now. I'm afraid they're going to have to start rationing how many they let out at a time, because otherwise consultants are going to have to pick and choose very judiciously which one they want to go for. So we might have to trickle these out over a 6 or 8 week time frame. So given that, I would like to get the Highway 20 refinement plan on the street as soon as possible. But again, everything working well, it might be mid-April before we have somebody selected and actually on board. The Reed Market study would be close second to that. Third is outside the area, but it's an update to the Prineville TSP, and then a safety study on Highway 97 between High Bridge and Madras. The 2 Bend projects will be the top priorities, and I'm thinking right now it's mid-April to maybe May before we actually have notice to proceed. A lot of words to not give them much information, I know.
All right, thank you. Andrea, do you want to give just a quick update on the status of the Mobility Hubs project?
Yeah, so we are currently into task 2 of the study, which is where the consultant will be delivering Tech Memo 2, which is the market assessment. So that would be looking at gaps and connections in the multimodal network, as well as potential complementary land uses for mobility hubs, potential public-private partnerships, as well as possible anchor uses for mobility hub locations. So our next project TAC is on the 16th at 2:30, and again, all the documents and information on meetings is hosted through CET's website. So they're hosting the project website. So this project we have 7 tasks, so we're still kind of early in the development. But this next one, the market assessment, I think will be a pretty interesting one.
Thank you. Excuse me. Any other TAC members want to share anything about any of their current plans or projects? I see Henry, did you want to?
Yeah, I've got a quick update. So just some good news. And can I share my screen really quick? Is that okay?
Yep, please do.
Oh, I think someone else has. I think you'd have to stop sharing.
Sorry.
Yeah, thanks, Tyler. Appreciate it. So we got some really good news at the Park District last week after years of working with North Unit Irrigation District and lobbying them to allow us to move forward with some trail projects along their irrigation system. They've given us the green light to move forward with our design planning for the first phase of what we call the North Unit Canal Trail. So this is a planned trail that runs along North Unit's main irrigation canal in Northeast Bend. A portion of this trail through the Petrosa neighborhood is being built through the private land use development process as part of this master plan. And next week, we're going to be releasing an RFP for design and permitting of this section that you can see here. So essentially from Canal Row Park, we have some small existing sections of trail. And then this corridor would run to Deschutes Market Road. We're also looking at doing a loop trail in between Empire Road and Deschutes Market Road, because this is already a heavily trafficked loop. There's some more feasibility that we have to do on the southern end of the canal to see if that's reality, but this is being included as part of that initial scope. Robin, one thing I wanted to point out is that we are scoping our designer to do a trail crossing plan for Brinson. And we've indicated a preference for a mid-block crossing, but also noted the adjacent intersection. So I left Janet a voicemail last week, but this is something that we should probably get together and talk about as early as possible as we're going through the procurement process for our designer.
That sounds great. Yeah, that's really exciting.
Right.
I'm seeing a lot of hands, Dave.
Actually, I had a question if there's anybody on can answer. I'm kind of curious what the status is of the Broster House Railroad Undercrossing project. I went by there the other day and I noticed the south or the northbound lane is closed. I can't tell if that's just a temporary pedestrian accommodation or if that's because the project's about to start or what's happening.
Yeah, I can do that. So they're doing sewer underneath that lane, and it is being used for a temporary pedestrian route to the school until the railroad portion of it can be built. That should be built this spring. I think traffic should be open by May or June. So it's quite a long one lane closure. So it's pretty exciting to have that coming up.
Yeah, thank you.
And Robin, you have your hand up. Did you want to share?
Yeah, I have a couple things. So there's quite a bit of work that the city's doing with ODOT in partnership on the North Corridor undercrossing in the vicinity of Roble or Fred Meyer. So we just completed a feasibility study and shared the results with ODOT. And next steps are to try and work with Burlington Northern and get some verbal approvals for some things. But we're trying to seek funding additions to the North Corridor project. Let's see. We don't have an answer yet, I guess is the main thing, but we did complete a feasibility study. There's at least two options that are technically feasible. Whether they can be approved by Burlington Northern or not, we still have to figure that part out. And then in June and July, I'm gonna be in the Netherlands on a class tour of transportation, infrastructure, walk, bike, transit, and working with the students at the University of Oregon. So it's a very exciting thing. We're in 8 cities in 4 weeks. So it's pretty good. We're going to meet with mayors and architects and park planners and transportation planners and engineers. I'll have a blog and I'll share it with you guys.
Need anybody to come along, carry your bags, just let me know.
Okay. Yeah, we're basically biking from town to town. So
that'll be our next TAC meeting in June. We'll be in the Netherlands then. We'll just go with
yeah.
it. All right, Angie, go ahead.
All right, thanks. It's tough to top that. I just wanted to give a quick thank you to Andrea for the nice onboarding phone call about a week and a half ago now and bring me up to speed on some of what this group's been working on. And thank you all for the discussion today. I learned a lot. I took a lot of notes, and I just want to put on your radar that I'm still getting up to speed on quite a few applications. Someone mentioned earlier that this is a kind of a hotbed of a lot of land use pressures right now. And I'm attempting to get up to speed on something like 85 land use projects right now in my 10 county range. And so I'll put my email in the chat because I want to make sure that if there's something on your guys' short list of priorities that I need to be looped in on, that you can ping me as much as you want. Feel free to nudge, because I'm just ramping up and it's going to take me a little while to really immerse into some of these ongoing conversations. And I'm on 3 regional solutions teams. So there's some overlap in some of these conversations. And I just want to make sure I've got it right. So I'll plug my email in the chat. And I also want to let you guys know that following my call with Andrea, we've arranged to have the climate friendly and equitable communities staff from DLCD give an update on their work in April. And I don't know, Andrea, if you want to talk about that some more, but that DLCD staff has committed to being available as a resource, and we'll be bringing some more information in a few weeks.
Yeah, I mean, all really to add to that is, we thought that an overview of that would be helpful for some of our TAC members, and additionally for our policy board as well. So looking forward to that for the meetings next month.
Okay, and I just realized I don't have a chat to plug into. So if you need it, I'll just say it really quick. It's just angie.brewer@dlcd.oregon.gov.
Thanks, Angie. Yeah.
All right, thank you. We are over, but we have does anybody have anything else they'd like to share? Oh, Andrea,
Yeah.
Bro, I see you have your hand up.
Hey there, just a quick update from the last time I gave the TAC an update on our drivers. As of yesterday, March 1st, the union and CET came to an agreement on wages. And so we are waiting for that agreement to be ratified, and hopefully will go into effect April 1st. We are hoping that an increase in base pay, COLAs, and step increases, that we're going to see an increase in applicants, which will help us get out of reduced service and back to our core services. So moving along, and we're hoping to see some changes here in the coming weeks. Thanks.
Great news.
Yeah, great. Thank you. All right. Our next TAC meeting is scheduled for April 6th. And as Angie mentioned, I think we'll be getting an update on the climate friendly rulemaking effort at that. And we have a couple of other things scheduled as well. So we will look for an agenda a little bit in advance of that. And if there's nothing else, I will adjourn the meeting. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.